Jason stepped off the transport ship and felt the hot wind hit his face. Outpost 92 was a dry, dusty place on the edge of the galaxy. A broken colony where forgotten machines rusted and the sky never changed color. He came here to fix old systems. Just a quiet job away from trouble, but trouble was waiting. As he walked through the metal gate, a voice called out from the guard tower, "New guy, right? You're late. We thought you changed your mind." Jason gave a nod and said, "Just got delayed. I'll get to work." The guard pointed toward the control center and said, "Stay away from the southern fence. Some weird stuff happened there." Last night, Jason didn't ask. He just walked past crates, scrap, and oil drums. But something near the south fence caught his eye. There was movement, small, slow, and weak. He stepped closer. And his heart jumped. A girl no older than maybe 12 was lying in the dirt. Her skin had a soft glow, blue with faint violet markings. Not human, but not fully alien either. She wore rags, and her arms were bruised. One of her legs was cut. And she was shivering. Jason knelt beside her and whispered, "Hey, are you hurt?" The girl opened one eye slowly. Her voice was low and broken. "Don't take me back, please." Then she passed out. Jason looked around. No one was near. He lifted her gently, her body light as paper. She didn't weigh more than a backpack. He carried her to his quarters and locked the door behind him. The others would ask questions, and he didn't want to answer yet. Inside, he placed her on the bed and cleaned her wound as he pressed the bandage to her leg. Her blood touched his hand. It was warm, strangely warm to warm, and the moment it touched his skin, a strange spark flowed through his arm. Jason gasped and pulled back, shaking his hand. What was that? He whispered, looking at her face again. She was different, not like the aliens he had seen before. Her features were softer, her eyes human-shaped. Even her ears were small and round. He checked her heartbeats, low but steady. She was alive, but weak. Jason thought about reporting it, but something inside him said no. This girl was scared, hurt, and alone. He remembered her words, "Don't take me back." What had she escaped from? He powered on his old med scanner, the one he used for basic health checks. He needed to know if she was sick or dangerous. The scanner beeped and ran a quick scan over her body. He waited as the screen loaded. Then he froze. A red warning flashed. DNA anomaly detected. Then the red turned green. And a new message appeared. Genetic match found. 96% paternal alignment. Jason stared at the screen, his mouth dry. "That's not possible," he whispered. He checked the scanner again. No error, no glitch. It was saying he was related to her, almost like a father. He sat down slowly, his eyes on the girl. "Who are you?" he said quietly. She didn't move, just breathed gently, her chest rising and falling. Jason leaned back in his chair, trying to think. He had never had children, never donated DNA, never signed up for any program, so how could this be? Outside, a sandstorm began to rise, covering the outpost in dust, but inside, a different storm was growing. Jason looked at the girl again, and for the first time in years, he felt afraid not of danger, but of the truth. Jason couldn't sleep. That night, the strange girl lay quietly on the small bed in the corner, her chest rising slowly, her breath shallow but calm. He sat across from her, staring at the med scanner on the table, the message still glowing on the cracked screen. Genetic match found. 96% paternal alignment. That single line kept spinning in his mind like a broken fan blade. He had no children. He had never signed up for any fatherhood programs. He never even trusted medical labs after what happened during the last war. Then why did this machine think she was his daughter? Jason got up and walked to the sink, splashing water on his face. His hands trembled slightly. Something he hadn't felt since the battlefield. Was this a mistake? A trick? A trap set by someone. Or was it real? He turned back to the girl and noticed her eyes were open, just barely, two soft lavender orbs watching him silently. "You're awake," he said gently, walking closer. She blinked once and said nothing, her lips dry, her skin pale. He poured her a little water and lifted her head carefully, helping her sip. The girl coughed, then whispered, "You scanned me." Jason paused, the cup still in his hand. "Yes." "I did," he said slowly. She looked down, her fingers clutching the thin blanket. "It told you, didn't it?" "Told me what?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "That I'm yours," she said. Almost too quiet to hear, Jason sat beside her, trying to keep his voice calm. "How could that be? I don't understand. I've never used your blood." She interrupted, eyes still not meeting his, "From the war. From the samples they made me." Jason's heart skipped. He remembered the old army med scans. The time when soldiers were ordered to give blood during checkups, back when he served on the frontline planets. He never asked where that blood went afterward. Now he knew. He looked at the girl. Really looked at her this time. The human shape of her eyes, the curve of her nose, the way her fingers twitched when she was nervous, just like his did. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Echo," she said, barely louder than a breath. "Echo," he repeated, his voice breaking slightly. "I waited for you," she whispered. "They said you wouldn't come, but I waited anyway." Jason felt something in his chest crack. Something old and locked away. He stood up quickly, pacing the room, trying to think. Trying to breathe. Someone had taken his blood, created a child, experimented on her. And then what? Threw her away? Lost her? Or was she running from them? He looked at her again, more fragile than anyone should be, and yet she had survived long enough to find him. Echo. A name chosen by someone who probably didn't care about her feelings, but still. It sounded like hope. Jason sat down again, closer this time. "I don't know what to do," he admitted. "I don't even know how to be a father." She turned her head and met his eyes. "Just don't send me back." He reached out slowly, brushing a piece of hair from her forehead. "I won't," he said. "I promise." Outside, the wind howled through the outpost like a cry through metal bones, but inside, two strangers sat in silence. Connected by blood, by pain, and by something neither of them fully understood yet. The DNA scan had revealed the truth, but it also opened the door to a future Jason never expected. And somewhere far beyond the stars, someone else might already be looking for what they lost or what they wanted back. The morning light over Outpost 92 was cold and gray, filtered through the storm-stained windows like weak breath through glass. Jason hadn't slept. Not even for a minute. Echo had fallen into a deep sleep again, her body still recovering, but her words echoed louder than the wind outside. "They used your blood," she had said. Jason needed answers, not guesses, not theories, facts. He opened the locked case he hadn't touched in years, pulled out his old military badge, and powered it on. The chip inside still worked, barely, and after several tries, it connected too. The outer net, the restricted military archive. Jason typed one word: Project Echo. Access denied. He tried again, this time using a bypass code from his old unit. A trick he learned from a technician years ago. The screen blinked twice, then opened. A hidden directory. His heart pounded. The files were old, corrupted in places, but the names were clear. Project Echo. Human-Alien Genomic Fusion Trial. Subject 11. Hybrid, female. Father sample, J_Thorpe_92. Jason's breath caught. That was him. His ID tag from the war, used without permission, without knowledge, without mercy. He scrolled through medical logs, cold and clinical, describing how the embryo grew, how it responded to stress, how it could process 2 languages by age 2. No pictures, no voices, just data, until he found a short video log. He tapped play. A lab room appeared, bright, white, sterile. A small girl sat at a table, maybe 5 or 6, dark silver hair tied back, violet eyes wide as she looked into the camera. "Where is my father?" she asked. "You said I would meet him?" A voice off-screen responded. "Not yet. Subject 11. Your father is far away." The girl looked down. "But I feel him," she said, like a missing sound. Jason shut the screen, hands shaking. It wasn't just a lab project. It wasn't just science. She had waited, truly waited for him. He walked back to the bed and looked at her sleeping face. So calm now. Someone had taken his blood and built a life from it, and now that life was asking him to protect her. But how long before those people came looking? Jason knew how black projects worked. Nothing stayed hidden forever, especially mistakes. He heard a knock at the door. 3 slow taps, heavy, deliberate. Jason grabbed his sidearm and opened the door halfway. It was Mac, the old comms operator. "From the tower, you've seen the ship that landed just now," Mac asked, chewing on a stick of dry root. "Didn't send any landing code? No ID badge?" Jason shook his head. "No. Why?" "Because they're not here for repairs," Mac said, narrowing his eyes. "They're asking questions. Strange ones." Jason's stomach dropped. What kind of questions? "Something about missing property. A girl, about this tall," Mac said, gesturing roughly. "Sound familiar?" Jason kept his face blank. "Never seen her," he lied. Mac studied him for a second, then nodded. "Watch yourself. People like that don't ask twice." He turned and walked off. Jason shut the door and leaned against it, his mind racing. They had found her. Or were close. He looked at Echo, still asleep, still dreaming, and whispered, "I'm not letting them take you. Not this time, not ever." Whatever Project Echo had planned, whatever these people wanted, Jason would face them head-on. Because Echo wasn't just a science experiment. She was his daughter, and she had finally come home. The dust hadn't even settled from the last transport when the black ship landed without warning. No call, no light signal, no name tag on its hull. Just a long, silent vessel shaped like a hunting blade stuck into the dirt. Jason watched from the shadows behind a storage crate, his heart steady but heavy. 3 figures stepped out. Armored, tall, and quiet. Not soldiers, not locals, something colder. They didn't look around, didn't greet anyone, just walked with purpose, straight toward the outpost's command station. Jason could almost smell it. They weren't visitors. They were collectors. Inside the small room where Echo rested, the air felt tight, like the calm before a lightning strike. She opened her eyes slowly and whispered, "They're here." Jason crouched beside her. "How do you know?" She didn't answer with words, just pointed at her chest, then her head. "They send pulses," she said. "When they come for me." Jason's jaw clenched, his fingers twitching near the pistol on his belt. He had lived through war, seen bombs fall and friends die, but nothing made his skin crawl like this. They had marked her, maybe with tech, maybe with some kind of tracking signal buried deep inside her flesh. He helped her stand, though she was still weak. "You trust me?" he asked. Echo nodded. More than anyone, he guided her to the back of the room, pulled up a floor panel, and showed a small tunnel that led under the outpost, an old smuggler's escape path used during trade raids. "You stay in there. No noise, no light. Wait for my signal," he said firmly. She hesitated, then pulled something from her Pokita, small chip with a cracked edge, covered in dried blood. "Hide this," she said. "It has their faces, their voices, everything." Jason tucked it into his inner jacket, nodded once, and closed the hatch behind her. Then he turned to face the storm coming his way. The mercenaries moved fast, speaking only when needed. The leader, a pale alien with 6 small scars running down his cheek, stopped in front of Jason's door. He didn't knock, just stepped in like he owned the room. Jason sat calmly on a crate, polishing an old wrench, acting like just another repairman with no time for outsiders. "Looking for something?" Jason asked, voice flat. "We're retrieving what belongs to us." The leader said without blinking, "Female subject escaped during transfer." Jason shrugged. "No kids here, just broken machines and tired men." One of the others moved to the corner, sniffed the air, then pointed to the bed. The sheets were still warm. The leader stepped closer to Jason, eyes cold and sharp. "You've seen her," he said. "I can smell her on your hands." Jason stood up slowly, not reaching for his weapon yet, but not backing down either. "I've seen a lot of sad things," he replied, "but I don't help people who use kids like parts." The leader's hand twitched, resting near his belt where a needle-thin weapon waited. "Step aside," he said. "This is not your war." Jason's hand moved like lightning, grabbing a metal pipe and swinging it hard across the table, knocking over tools and creating noise that echoed through the walls. "Then why does she call me father?" Jason growled. The words hung in the air like fire. The mercenaries froze, just for a second, as if that word father meant more than it should. Then the leader's face twisted in rage. "You don't even know what she is." Jason stepped back toward the hidden tunnel hatch and pressed the silent alarm button beside it. One buzz meant, "Run now, she's mine," Jason said, low and final. "And I'm not letting you take her." Outside, the backup alarms began to blare, and the outpost's emergency defenses activated on old promise of protection long forgotten. But not quite dead. Gunfire erupted at the far gate. Voices shouted in panic, and the wind kicked up sand and smoke into the sky. And beneath it all, Echo crawled through the old tunnel, scared but determined, holding on to the only truth she had left. Her father was above, fighting for her, and this time she would fight too. Smoke rose behind the outpost, thick and black, curling like fingers clawing at the sky. Jason slammed the door shut and dragged a crate in front of it, his chest rising and falling fast. His knuckles were scraped, a burn marked his shoulder, and his breathing was tight, but he was still alive, and so was Echo. The tunnel exit burst open behind the workshop shed, and Echo crawled out coughing, covered in dust and grime. She saw Jason's blood on his shirt and ran to him, stumbling, her knees shaky, but her eyes sharp. "You didn't leave me," she said, voice cracking. Jason gave a weak grin. "Not my style." They didn't have time for hugs or questions. He grabbed her hand and pulled her into the back of the repair bay, a place with no windows, just walls of silent tools and half-built machines. "We can't outrun them," he said, "but maybe we can outsmart them." Echo reached into her pocket again and pulled out the same small chip, the one with the broken corner and dried blood still clinging to it. "This," she whispered. "They fear this." Jason took it and slid it into the old data reader on the desk. The screen flickered, glitched once, then opened a folder marked Eyes Only Echo, Project Internal. There were videos, logs, reports, and more than a dozen names tagged with words like authorized disposal, intelligence breach, and crossbreeding success. Jason clicked on the first file, a black and white video. Echo sat in a clear tube. Younger, even smaller, her arms covered in wires, her chest rising with effort. A cold voice spoke over the audio. "Subject 11 is adapting to pain stimulus at faster rates than predicted." Another voice replied, "Begin memory formation sequencing." The screen shifted, now showing her in a locked room, surrounded by pictures of human faces, none of which smiled. She was never treated like a person. Jason whispered, fists clenched. She was trained like a tool, Echo watched without blinking, her lips tight, her fingers gripping the edge of the desk until her knuckles turned white. Another file played a lab tech whispering to the camera. "They don't know I'm recording this, but if anyone finds this, she's alive and she's thinking, and she knows who her father is. They used his DNA. Said it would increase emotional development. She's not a weapon. She's a child." Jason's face drained of color. He remembered that day now, the old medical scan during his exit physical, the blood test he barely noticed, the waiver he never read. He had signed it like every other soldier. "Without knowing what it meant, they stole you from a form I didn't even know I gave," Jason said. Looking at Echo, "They made you, and then tried to erase you." Echo leaned her head on his arm, gently, her voice soft but strong. "I don't want to hide anymore." Jason looked at the chip, still full of files that could expose everything. "We don't run," he said. "We release this to the entire Cornet, broadcast the truth." Echo nodded, her eyes full of something new, not just fear, but fury. She tapped the screen, activated the upload code, and whispered, "Let them come." Outside, the mercenaries regrouped, their leader furious, barking orders, hunting for the missing girl with increased rage. But inside the walls of a forgotten outpost, a stolen child and a broken man were about to start a storm no one could stop, because the chip wasn't just a secret, it was proof of a crime. And Echo was no longer a project. She was a name, a voice, and a daughter whose time to speak had finally come. Asterisk, the message took only seconds to upload, but the shockwave it caused was instant. Jason and Echo sat in silence as the screen blinked twice, then turned blue. Data transmission complete, sent to CoreNet, DefenseNet, civilian logs, and council archives. It was done, no going back. Every government, every merc, group, every intelligence net that ever whispered the words Project Echo, they would all know the truth now. Jason looked at Echo. "They'll come harder now." She didn't flinch. "Let them." An alarm howled outside. Not from their base, but from the mercenary ship itself. The leader had received the data too, and now his silence turned to violence. Jason heard the metallic thud of boots hitting the ground, heard a strange humming in the air, low and sharp. "Like something powering up EMP charge," he said, eyes narrowing. "They're going to wipe this whole place." Echo's breath caught. "We have to go." He grabbed her hand, guiding her quickly through the maintenance tunnels under the shed. Years ago, he had mapped every inch of these passages. Now they were his only way out. Lights flickered overhead, dim red pulses showing the route to the old launch bay. There hadn't been a working shuttle in years, but Jason wasn't planning to use what was old. He had something buried, something secret. They reached a locked crate hidden behind engine parts and metal sheets. Jason slammed his palm on the reader and the crate hissed open. Inside was a sleek black pod, half repaired, half forbidden, old tech from before the war. "Still think it'll fly?" Echo asked, raising an eyebrow. Jason smirked. "I didn't waste 10 years on this junk for nothing." He helped her inside, then powered the ignition. The pod came to life with a growl, old engines screaming as they pushed against gravity outside. The mercs burst through the compound gate, weapons drawn, heat sensors scanning every inch of the ground. The leader shouted, "Find the child. Eliminate the traitor," but it was too late. The launch doors opened with a slam, and fire lit up the dark as Jason's pod lifted off. Kicking sand and metal into the air, the mercs fired. Dozens of red blasts chasing the ship. One hit the wing and sparked. But the pod didn't slow. Inside, Echo gripped the seat. Eyes wide, "We're not safe yet." Jason nodded, flipping switches. "We don't need safe, we need fast." The pod soared into the sky, climbing higher. breaking through the low clouds that hung like traps above the outpost. Behind them, explosions shook the ground, wiping out everything they left behind. But Echo didn't look back. She was staring at the screen in front of her, where messages started pouring in thousands, millions, across the galaxy. People were seeing the files, hearing her voice, watching her grow up in a cage, watching her ask for her father. Jason leaned forward, reading one message aloud. Is this real? Are these files legit? This child was made. Who did this? Someone must answer. Echo smiled faintly. They're listening. Jason stared at her, not just as a father, but as a witness. She was no longer hidden, no longer silent. They had escaped the outpost, but now they were inside a larger storm. The kind that didn't end with running, the kind that changed the entire galaxy. And Echo was at the center of it all, not as an experiment, not as a subject, but as the spark that no one could put out. The stars looked calm from above, as if nothing had happened below, but Echo knew better. She sat inside the cockpit of the stolen pod, wrapped in a blanket, eyes fixed on the glowing stream of messages flooding across the display. The galaxy was waking up, people from distant planets, outer colonies. Even soldiers from old factions, all of them now knew who she was. Not a number, not a project. Echo was a voice, a life, a stolen child who had been hidden in the dark. Jason adjusted the controls as they approached a small moon, one of his old hideouts. A mining husk, long abandoned. We'll rest here, he said. Regroup, plan. Echo nodded, but her mind was far ahead. You saw the message from Corin. Prime? She asked, voice low. Jason tapped the screen, reading it aloud. We demand answers. If this girl is real, then someone broke every law in the book. Echo turned to him, her eyes steady. They're not just asking, they're choosing sides. Jason leaned back, rubbing his tired face. Yeah, and soon someone will send a fleet. But Echo didn't look afraid anymore. She stood up, walked to the storage locker, and pulled out the chip, the original one. Still cracked, still stained. There's more on this, she said. Names, coordinates, backup labs. Jason narrowed his eyes. You want to finish it? Echo looked at him and said something he wasn't ready for. I want to make sure no other kid ends up like me. The words landed heavy. She could have run, disappeared, vanished into the dark corners of space. But she didn't want that. She wanted to be the end of the chain, the last secret born from someone else's stolen blood. Jason stood beside her. Then we'd do it together. They touched down on the silent moon, dust rising beneath the pod's landing gear, inside the bunker. Echo linked the chip to a wider relay forgotten satellite Jason had rebuilt years ago. Once used for deep signal mining logs, now it would carry truth across the stars. As she typed, the satellite came alive, its old circuits glowing again. Like it had been waiting for this moment, the final files opened lab locations. Officials involved, transfer routes, payment records. Even the names of children who didn't survive. Jason looked at the screen and felt his stomach twist. So many names, so many numbers. So much silence. Echo uploaded it all. No hesitation, then she turned to Jason. You still think I was just a stranger? He stepped forward, placed a hand on her shoulder, and smiled softly. No, he said. You were never a stranger. I just didn't know you were missing. Outside, the stars continued to shine, but now, across the galaxy, people looked up and saw them differently. They saw the truth, and in the middle of it all, one voice echoed louder than the rest, a voice that had been locked away, now breaking free. The voice of a girl who found her father in the ruins and turned her pain into light.